For today's story, we talk about the 2-year sentence given to Kim Potter and whether or not it makes any sense in light of the judge's own comments. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you'll enjoy this legal education content, and today will be the day I earn your subscription. But first, a huge shout out to this video's supporter, Aura. Aura is a company that can help you with identity theft protection and credit monitoring. When your personal information leaks online, you're at a higher risk of credit card fraud or identity theft, which means that your money and your reputation could be at risk right now. Aura scans the dark web looking for these threats and alerts you if it finds anything. With an easy-to-use online dashboard and alerts that are sent straight to your phone, Aura keeps you in control and guides you through solving any issues. So how can you protect yourself? Well, go to aura.com/uncivillaw to protect yourself from hackers, scammers, and nosy advertising companies, among other threats. When you use my link below, aura.com/uncivillaw, you'll get up to 40% off on all plans, plus a money-back guarantee for new subscribers if you're not fully satisfied, which I believe you will be. aura.com/uncivillaw to help protect you against the growing threats of credit card fraud and identity theft protection in this increasing digital age. For today's story, we are talking about Kim Potter, former Minnesota police officer sentenced to 2 years in prison for the shooting of Daunte Wright. Daunte Wright was pulled over for a traffic incident, and then Kim Potter, as part of that incident, shot him. The details, of course, are quite important because everyone seems to admit that she didn't know she had the gun, she didn't intend to use the gun, she wasn't aware that she had the gun at the time she shot him, and so forth and so on. But she's been convicted and sentenced anyway, which doesn't quite make sense. So we're going to review this article from CNN, and when we're going to discuss some of the legal issues that seem quite ripe for appeal, let's get started with this. Kim Potter, the former Minnesota police officer who mistakenly drew a gun, and mistake is a pretty key word here, instead of a taser and fatally shot Daunte Wright, was sentenced on Friday to 2 years in prison. The sentence comes nearly 2 months after Potter was convicted of first and second-degree manslaughter. Prosecutors requested 7 years and 2 months, while Potter's attorneys argued for a lesser sentence. Potter will be required to serve 2/3 of her sentence in prison, or 16 months. With good behavior, she'll be eligible for supervised release for the remaining third. The Hennepin County judge, Judge Chu, called it an extremely difficult decision. It is extremely difficult because it doesn't meet the law. It doesn't make sense. Mistake is a defense that would prevent the law's application. Legal mistake is a term of legal art. If you have mistake, you don't have a crime. Okay. In justifying it, she pointed to several mitigating factors, saying it was undisputed she never intended to use her gun. Well, she never intended to use the gun, then she can't be recklessly disregarding that. Chu told the court she took into account 4 reasons for incarceration: retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation, saying retribution would be the only purpose served in this case. Retribution? I mean, for what exactly is unclear. The judge says there rightfully should be accountability. But, and here's where it gets legally, we'll talk about this in a little bit of depth. Potter is a cop who made a tragic mistake, the judge added. She drew her firearm thinking it was a taser and ended up killing a young man. Now, this sentence is pretty important, and in the actual sentencing, she used the word mistake many, many times. She only used the word reckless, which is the mens rea, the mental state requirement of the statute, once in a substantive way. She used it once to merely describe the crime in terms of its actual legal definition. But in describing Kim Potter's actions, she only used the word reckless once, and she swallowed it as she said it, like she didn't really believe it. She used the word mistake many, many times, and as we just read just now, the judge says, she drew her firearm thinking it was a taser and ending up killing a young man. So let's talk a little bit about the legal defense of mistake. What is mistake? Well, when we talk about mistake, we mean, first of all, mistake of fact, not, of course, mistake of law. You can't argue that you didn't know the law. You can't argue that you're mistaken about the law. That doesn't work. But what can work is mistake of fact. If you do something believing it to be one thing, and it's not that thing, that can be a relief from legal liability. An example is you go to a restaurant that has a coat check. You check your coat. On the way out, you retrieve your coat. But it's not your coat. It's someone else's coat. But you thought it was your coat. That's not a crime. That's a mistake. You made a mistake of fact. You thought it was, in fact, your coat. You lacked the mental state requirement to steal. So that's a defense. Or you go up to the wrong car, trying to unlock the wrong car, as I have sometimes done in a parking lot, thinking it was my car, but it wasn't my car. So does that mean I'm guilty of some sort of attempted theft of auto? No, because I thought it was my car. The problem here is that she didn't know she had a gun by the judge's own words. She thought she was drawing a taser. That's a mistake of fact. So how can she be reckless? She thought she was drawing her taser, which she has the legal right to do. No one seems to dispute that in this situation. And with that belief in place, she intended to use her taser, as we saw from her saying taser, taser, taser. If you're really truly concluding this is a mistake, how are you simultaneously getting to recklessness? It doesn't make any sense as a legal argument. The family is also deeply disappointed there was not a greater level of accountability. The judge comments at sentence show a clear absence of compassion for the victim in this tragedy or devastating to the family. But that's not the purpose of sentencing. The purpose of sentencing isn't to measure the victim. The purpose of sentencing is to measure the perpetrator. That's kind of its point. We're trying to determine what the perpetrator deserves. We're not trying to determine the worth of the victim. Shortly before she was sentenced, Potter tearfully apologized to the family, saying, "I'm so sorry I brought the death of your son, father, brother, uncle, grandson, nephew, and the rest of your family. I'm sorry I broke your heart. I do pray that one day you find forgiveness only because hatred is so destructive to all of us." She also apologized to the city of Brooklyn Senators, saying that she'd love to work for the community. And those who are still do are good, honorable people. After Friday's hearing, Wright's mother told reporters her family was disappointed with the sentence. This is the problem with our justice system today. White women tears trump justice. No, it's just the law, which hasn't been followed, at least in my professional legal judgment. The maximum penalty for the first-degree manslaughter is 15 years or a $30,000 fine. However, under the state sentencing guidelines, a judge has discretion to sentence convicted offenders with no prior history, like Potter, to roughly between 6 and 8.5 years in prison. So, yeah, that would be the sentencing guidelines for this offense, 6.5 to 8 years. Video of the incident shows Potter, the 26-year-old police veteran, repeatedly yelling taser, which makes it seem like she thought she had a taser. Accidents can still be crimes if they occur because of recklessness or culpable negligence. Culpable negligence, by the way, in Minnesota basically just means the same thing as recklessness. It's defined that way. It's not a defense to the crimes charged. It really is, actually. Mistake is, in fact, a defense. It's been recognized forever. So that brings us to the end of discussion of the case, at least for the moment, of Kim Potter. To my mind, this criminal conviction does not make sense. Based on the judge's own conclusions during the sentencing, she used the word mistake many, many times. Mistake is a twin of justification. They're kind of brothers or twins, right? It's like we talk about justification all the time. This is roughly equivalent to saying you're justified, but I'm convicting you anyway. It doesn't quite make sense. Mistake is a mistake of fact, like this would preclude recklessness. Where exactly is the recklessness coming from? If she made a mistake, like hitting the wrong pedal in the car, if that's a mistake, it's not a criminal act. So obviously I can't speak to Kim Potter's intent to appeal. But personally, I hope she does, because this conviction doesn't make any sense given the judge's own comments. And if it appeals, we will certainly follow it. But at least for the moment, that brings us to the end of discussion of this case. Thank you so much for being part of the Uncivil Law family. If you enjoyed this legal education content, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. We appreciate your continuing support, Until later, my friends, cheers and goodbye.